This is the DJI Osmo Pocket 3 and I'm going to go over 10 flaws which may or may not be deal breakers that other influencers may have missed, turned a blind eye, or ignored. And I'm not saying that because they got free items that they're shilling products. However, they could be busy and just might have overlooked these things. And at the end of the video, I'll add 3 positive things that they may have missed. First off, it's one of these things that cinema, photo, take notice. You see what I'm doing here? I'm covering it. I am adjusting the focus. It's focus breathing. The DJI has a lot of focus breathing. That is when the background expands and contracts because you're playing with the focus. The focus is changing. For instance, this camera doesn't have much focus breathing. It has a little bit, but the DJI has a lot. Number 2 is the lack of D-Log 10-bit or the lack of 10-bit in general. If it doesn't say D-Log 10-bit, I'm assuming that it's filming in 8-bit. And that means that every other setting other than normal video mode. So you have normal video modes that has 1080p, 4K from 24 to 60. You have the setting for D-Log 10-bit. So that means that you might end up with footage that you have to mix and match color grading. It can be a bit of an annoyance. Number 3, the DJI Pocket 3 has a 1-inch sensor. However, that 1-inch sensor is not truly 1 inch. There is no dimension of the sensor itself that is 1 inch. Wide, it's 0.52 inches, and tall, it's 0.35 inches, and diagonally, it's not going to equal 1 inch. However, that doesn't mean that they're cheating you because cell phones, they use the same standard. So if you see 1 over 1.7 inch or 1 over 1.28 like the iPhone 15 Pro, that means that it doesn't mean that it's 75 or 80% of an inch. It's far less than that. Number 4, active track is too responsive. And what do I mean by that is that when you're using the DJI Pocket, it has a setting mode so that when you turn it, you see how responsive the turning mechanism is? It's not at all. It's slow and smooth for the cinematic type look. But when you're doing active track, it just tends to move very fast. That just doesn't jive well. It's not consistent with how the gimbal behaves in other scenarios. And to be frank, I find it quite jarring, and I'm not a big fan of how that works. Number 5, the touch icons, they're somewhat confusing. You've got the SD icon, which tells you how much time there is, but you can't touch it. There's the little joystick-like icon below it. Below that one is the video, which you can touch, and it does change. And then next to it, the filming mode you're in, you cannot touch that. You have to swipe from the bottom to change that setting. And then there is the flippy selfie mode button. You can touch that. The zooming and the anti-zooming and the battery, you can touch those too. So I wish that DJI had like maybe a circle icon or some sort of indicator to let you know that you can touch these buttons rather than fiddling around. It would be cleaner if it was a bit more intuitive. Number 6, this screen is flawed. Sure, it can go portrait or horizontal. That's good, right? But that means that you have to be eye level. That means that when you raise it above your head, you have to tilt your head up and you have to tilt down. That means that your gimbal is going to point up in the air. Conversely, if you're downwards and you're pointing it up so that you can see it, your gimbal is going to point on the floor. So because of that, it should have a tilty screen instead or a fully articulating screen. That's just my opinion. Number 7 is LUT preview or the lack of LUT preview. When you're looking at this thing, it is going to be gray, and there goes that gimbal acting up. It's pointed up first. So the issue is that now you have a gray looking like screen with no colors at all. Granted, you know, I am Asian without much color, but still, if you're in a room where you change the white balance setting, you need to know, are you within the range? And if it's grayed out like this. So number 8 is this body design. Mainly missing the quarter 20 on the bottom, and because of that, they give you a part And I see that DJI's logic is that they have the USB-C on the bottom right here so that they can plug it in and they can change up the accessories even more. And maybe they might have some crazy robotics accessory on the bottom with legs that can walk. Who knows? But the point is that because there's a USB-C on the bottom and a USB-C here and a clipping mechanism, they can have electronic pieces on the bottom. But you know what? I don't think that's very useful at all. I would think that quarter 20 right here would have been much nicer because you can just mount it direct instead of having this. Because once you got this, look how tall it is. And this is the short one. If you have the battery extender, it gets even longer. The body gets kind of silly, okay? And, you know, since I'm talking about the body, I mean, there's this cord right here. And I wish it was a little bit bigger. I know I'm already like Asian, so like a smaller human. And I can barely fit my hand through here. So if I'm having problems with this, you know, maybe my hands are too big. I don't know. But, you know, the ladies certainly aren't flocking to me. And another thing with this body design is just this small one right here. This memory card, I don't know why it's hidden. They could have had the quarter 20 right here. They could have had the USB come out right here and then the memory card right above it, or anywhere on this side for that matter, and it would make no difference. And the number 9 issue with this is that it has a built-in battery. And so yeah, so DJI made that little part right here, the battery bank, which gives you 60% more runtime. But if they just had an interchangeable battery instead, even if this was screws, I mean, nobody's going to complain about that. Well, yeah, they might complain if it was screws, but if it was a quick change and then you can change out batteries, that would have been so much nicer. So the body design, you know, you've got a couple items there that they could have improved on. And the 10th major flaw with the DJI Pocket 3 is that it needs to be activated. You need internet connection to activate it for first time. You need to log in with your DJI account. That means that you're giving up some privacy. You need contact info and other identifiers based on app privacy to track you. So your information you're giving to DJI, and that's like selling your information, and only reputable companies can steal your information, like Facebook, Google. But now DJI wants it as well. I know it's been a long-standing issue, and I already have an account, so my information is already granted to them. But still, that is, I think it's silly that you just have to activate this device. Otherwise, you use it a few times and then you won't be able to use it anymore. Come on now. So I'm going to end it on a note of these 3 more positive things. First up is DJI Log. And if you're dealing with log, you might be scared of editing it. You might be scared of color grading and adjusting whatever that's involved. But DJI gives you a free LUT. You can go download it on their website, and you don't have to be registered to download it. It's just wide in the open. So another thing is that this camera is kind of like a pro camera in that it is extremely customizable. Like if you're in video mode, you can change your sharpness settings, your noise settings, and your D-Log M setting. When you go into low light mode, when you go into slow motion mode, those individual settings, they're not carried over. You can adjust it there freely. Same thing with white balance. So they're almost like 3 separate, well, 4 separate. You have the regular shooting mode as well, and the panorama mode, by the way, which saves all RAWs, which is nice as heck. And from there, you can change all of the little settings on all of them, and they're all like little memory slots for each one of those modes. And lastly, this camera saves in H.264 and H.265, and their 10-bit H.265 is 420. That means that if you're using a Windows machine, that means that if your machine is underpowered and not a Mac M1 style silicon chip, you'll be able to edit the footage without issue. I mean, you might have some issues, but it's going to be hardware accelerated for probably most people. So combined with the 10-bit encoding, which is possible, and combine that with, I believe it's 130 megabits HEVC. It might be less, to be honest, because it's higher bit rates when you're using H.264 than compared to H.265, and you're not able to change those bit rates. So it might be even less than 130 megabits per second, because I know that's the max, but it should be around at least 100 megabits per second HEVC, which is fairly respectable in terms of bitrate. So you'll have a good amount of latitude when you're trying to push the files. Anyhow, that's all I have for this video. I hope it wasn't entirely clickbait. Thank you so much for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and I'll be doing more of these videos. See you in the next one. Take care.